There's no one like us, the only podcast you can truly trust.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex, baby. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Fig Factor Weekly.
Yeah.
Do you know what? You were so good because you were like bringing the high notes to it. Max Dead Baby, always a pleasure.
It's going to be with a handshake every single
back
time.
by popular demand, wonderful Tony Carroll. Tony, how are we doing? How's your week been?
Great. Yeah,
Good.
good to see. Start of a new month. I think everyone's had a good week. Been enjoying it.
It's been disgustingly busy, but it is a good problem to have. Max Dead, how is the world of nerds and virgins? How are you doing?
Disgustingly busy as well.
One of those
And
very
just
on
disgusting in
topic.
general, really.
Yeah.
But
So really exciting episode today by popular demand. We're finally doing our first sex episode, probably one of many on the sex series. And in particular, we are talking about libido. We're talking about what is the libido, what wrecks it, what makes it brilliant, why is it important, and ultimately, we are going to show you how you can turn your libido from what was the car out of the in-betweeners? It's like a Fiat Cinquecento. How you can turn your libido from a Fiat Cinquecento Hawaii edition into a Ferrari 488 Spider. That's probably a pretty good analogy, isn't it? I could probably do that
For
better.
those that know what those are.
Yeah, I felt like that was a really...
from bad car to good car. There we go.
I've got two analogies to this.
Got
In
pictures.
today's episode, we're going to run you through how you can take your libido from a Fiat Punto to a Ferrari 488, or if your libido was a love song, we're going to show you how to take it from "Hello, darkness, my old friend" to "Let's get it on." Oh, babe.
Harry's just looking for
Let's
excuses
get it
to sing at
on.
this point.
Where do you pull this all from?
Yeah, I know. Do you know, people find it charming in small bursts, but like having to sit next to me for like a prolonged period of time, or could you imagine living with me? You're like, it's fun for like, it's fun for like 40 minutes, but after that, people are like, please just give it a break. But yeah, so guys, really exciting one today. Obviously, libido, it's something that affects all of us. It's a really important part of life, and I know that we kind of had a brief conversation about it. Guess what? Women like sex too these days, it turns out.
It's a shock.
That's news to me.
I wasn't ready for it, but women. It turns out women have needs and wants and desires as well. And as
I'm
always,
learning so much on this podcast.
I think
honestly.
it's going to be a bit of an education as well.
Yeah.
So, got some fun facts and figures.
we're thrilled to have you back because obviously Matt and I are just not qualified to speak on women whatsoever. It turns out from the feedback
Hasn't
we've been
stopped us
getting on
in
the
the past,
podcast.
but we-
No, it's been interesting hearing your thoughts, but not necessarily facts.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a conversation about what makes your libido tick and how we can get it back into overdrive. And as always, we've got some really great advice for the listeners at home that hopefully everyone can action. And if it can just help anyone's life improve 10-15%, it'll make you feel better. It'll make your relationship stronger. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do. So, Matt, pressure, I know. Matt, give us your idea. What's libido to Matt, and then we'll get the women's perspective on it.
Libido to Matt is sexual desire. It's
Very good.
how... my version is, how horny are you?
Yeah.
Simply, when I hear libido, I just think horny. That is what my brain thinks.
There's not to 100.
No,
and
0
there's
to
Matt.
100. I think that's a good description of men when it comes to this. It's 0 to 100. We're pretty binary with these things. We're on or off. I'd like to
Or
hear
is that
your
a
opinion.
stereotype?
Well, let's find out.
I think the thing is as well, though, it's like, that is what everyone sort of stereotypically thinks of men. Hot, red-blooded male, just
Chest
constantly wants sex, wants it all the time, drop of a hat, can get it hard on. And that's
Foreplay?
it.
Never heard of her.
And we have feelings too, don't we? Matt? Yeah, absolutely.
I want to be cuddled
Fed
afterwards.
up of being described like that. Yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah, but we were saying though, some of these stereotypes we do feel like they've shifted. Is there a bit of a sexual revolution going on for women and things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think times have really changed, and like you said, it's that we've come a long way from those sort of like crappy like 70s and 80s jokes where
got a headache.
it's the housewife who's too tired, and it's the bloke who's always there like, oh yeah, because sometimes I fake a headache. Sometimes I'm like, Jesus Christ, get off me. I'm like, oh, I'm just so bloated and this and that. But Tony, give us your idea from a woman's perspective. What is libido?
I guess it talks about arousal a lot. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just a one size fits all. Everyone can become, drive desire or become more aroused from different things. There's obviously, you know, like we'll go into it later, sort of ideas on how to improve libido, but, you know, there's so much that affects it from a day-to-day life, you know. People talk about age a lot in this, but also I think, you know, if you look at how complicated your life was maybe in your late teens into your 20s to how your life becomes a lot more complicated in your 30s and later, you know, there's a lot more going on. There's work, there's, you know, relationship dynamic, there's hormones. I might mention that one again.
Yeah, no, and you're completely right. You know, when you are younger and, you know, your body's just raging hormones, and also, like you said, you don't have that responsibility. You have very few priorities in life, and you can just go out and just sling dick like it's going out of fashion or whatever.
Been sowing your seed where you Harry.
But once you have the
Mini
pressures
Genghis Khan
of,
over
you
here.
know, I've got a mortgage, I've got a career, I have these other external pressures on my life, unfortunately you have to start thinking about these things. They do start interfering. So, you know, to me, I think your libido is your body's natural desire for sex, and it varies for everyone. There's no right or wrong answer. Some people have a very high sex drive, some people have a lower sex drive. But then there are also the external factors, like we mentioned. You know, sometimes your sex drive can be lowered if you've got, you know, a really stressful job, if you've got poor health, if you've got a bad diet, if you're underslept, if you've got underlying health issues, that will all impact your libido.
I think it comes down to the body, the way it's. If there's things going wrong in your life, it's not going to prioritise sex. It's like you need to get your house in order before you can actually go and use the bedroom, right?
Well,
It's that
actually,
sort of
it
thing.
depends at what point of your menstrual cycle you're at as to what is the priority to be
Yes,
on.
Matt. What part of your menstrual cycle are you at? Are you referring to,
Stage
Matthew?
3.4.
Yeah.
When a woman is ovulating, her body is telling her to have a child. So everything in her body tends to lean towards
So this is the difference
that
in the
being
men.
quite
It's
a high
like,
priority.
And you paid for yourself already, Tony. This is why you're here to bring, because it's really interesting that there's that. Again, so much of what we look at comes back to that, like, caveman ancestral instinct, and obviously that's where the desire from a woman comes from. It's that reproductive need, absolutely. But yeah, to me, you know, libido is, you know, ultimately it's the sex drive. People have their own sex drive, but like we said, there are a lot of different variables that can either lower it or can pull it up. I think also as well, a change in your sex drive is often an indicator to potential health issues, either improving it or worsening it. Years ago, I'm sure I've showed Matt pictures, but when I would, you know, when I'd occasionally fight and I'd cut a load of weight for it, I'd drop below what was like my natural weight, and basically my body would be so depleted. I had zero sex drive. You could have put a gun to my head and been like, "We're going to shoot you if you can't get a hard on,"
energy
and I'd have been
as well,
like, "I'd have been like, pull that trigger because I haven't got a fucking chance here." Whereas I've put on about 10 kilos in the past year, and I feel absolutely fantastic for it. So there are a lot of these little bits that I think maybe people don't think about when they think about sex drive. Maybe they're just like, "Oh, I feel a bit flat," but they don't think, actually, I'm getting less sleep, I'm not exercising regularly.
Yeah.
Oh, and
What
then
is
all
the
these
point?
other
It's not
things.
necessarily just, oh, you know, if it's a man, erectile dysfunction, issues there or something. It's not necessarily, oh, it's a problem with your dick.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly
that's
that.
not-
It can be a much more, I don't know, if I said like holistic problem, would that be a
Ooh, I
good
like
way?
that.
Good
Enjoy
way
that,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many variables
It's
that come into
external
it.
factors.
And we, you know, all jokes aside, this is a great episode, and it's really useful for everyone. Not because we're just sat here being like, we want to know people who be listening to this be fucking. No, that's not the case. No, it's a very important part of life. It gives you real closeness with your partner. It also helps regular sex with happy hormones. It also helps boost testosterone, balance estrogen. There are a lot of medical benefits to being, you know, I'm not saying you got to be super regularly sexually active. I don't know, what's the average? What's the
Harry's
average?
gonna make sure
I
this-
was going to start with Tony. Tony's been married for a while. Tony, what's the
Well, there's
average
the
number of times
difference
per
is
week
that
you have sex?
Men tend to up their number and women tend to be a little bit more modest.
Yeah.
So I think that there's lots of different average stats out there, but the difference is 1 week it can be nothing and the other week can be very, very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think that's the thing. Like, the biggest thing, there is no normal. There's no standard. You know, yes, we can get online and read all these different statistics and averages, but ultimately every person or every couple need to set what they are happy with. And it's not about what the average is. It's ultimately, are you satisfied?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And then also as well, I think there's a lot of other variables that come into it that are way less glamorous, like how do your working schedules line up? How much time do you actually spend together? It's really easy to say like, oh, we do it 4 times a week. But if you guys are on the exact same schedule, you're home, you have all the same free time together. Whereas people where their partners maybe work in different
Shifts.
industries, do shift work and this and that, you know, you're probably lucky to get one good night a week together. and this is how I know I'm in my 30s now, is half the time when it's like, it gets to Saturday night, I'm just like, well, come on then, let's get it in.
Yeah.
She's a lucky girl.
Tony, average numbers of time you'd like to have intercourse a week?
But I'd like to.
Yeah.
Like I say, if I'm ovulating, there is no limit.
There is no limit. And if you're not, you're like a 0.
Then I'm like, absolutely not, to get away from me.
Max said your average. I can answer it. 0.
I was like, 100 times more, but 100 times 0 is still 0.
No, I'm only kidding. But as well, as the younger one of us, you're.
Well, I'd say
you're walking around with a
17-year-old me
weapon.
was about. If I look at a door, I get excited.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as much as humanly possible. As I've aged, even though I'm younger than you two, I'd say it's a balance again. A few times a week will do me fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be a
When
happy
do you
man.
think your sex drives, because obviously there's differences between men and women, so when do we think sex drives naturally do take a bit of a dip between men and women?
I think there's 2 answers to that question. I think it's a great question. I think there's 2 answers to that question. Number one, I'd say late 20s. I feel like you feel like a bit of a drop off when you are younger. You wake up, and again, sorry to our management team over here. At some point, you might have to wave us down and just start being like, change tactic. When you're a younger man, you wake up every morning, you're pitching a tent. You're like, a cool breeze would get you going. Absolutely. I think, firstly, once you start hitting your late 20s, I think your testosterone naturally starts to decline. I also think you've experienced so much more of life. I think when you're 16 years old, I think it's all ahead of you. You've never actually had those experiences with people, whereas by the time you reach your late 20s, early 30s, you kind of had most of the experiences you would want to, and so it's a bit less exciting and a bit more part of regular
Because you
life.
kind of know what you like as
Yeah,
well. You're
exactly.
not sort of testing the waters.
I think your testosterone will start to calm down around that point as well. And then also, for every gorgeous woman out there, there's a guy who's tired of banging her, as well. Once you've been with someone, I think everyone's had a relationship where you still love them and you're like, wow, they're a gorgeous person, and I think they're absolutely fantastic. But
not hitting the
but
spot.
after you've been with someone 500 times, it's not 501 isn't the same as 1. I think there is a difference. It does start to naturally decline. Is my 2 cents on it. My very
Good luck with your marriage,
yeah,
Harry.
yeah, exactly.
Harry's missus is like, I'm number 500. Christ,
Yeah.
right? Time to go.
Apart from my current partner, who hits the spot every time and rocks my world, and I have absolutely
Yeah.
0 complaints about.
I haven't
I'm
done the
sorry.
maths,
Nice
but
save.
I've been with my husband nearly 17
Matt,
years. So
calculator.
I'm hoping
If we've
probably had sex more than 500 times.
Yeah,
I
but if
don't
you did
know.
that as a time period,
how long
yeah.
have you been with him?
17 years.
If you had done it once a week for 17 years, you'd be at 884 times.
So I think we're probably exceeding
You're like-
500.
Look in her eyes when she says that as well. She's doing the classic thing where women lower the number. She's like, yeah, we might have hit it. She's like,
Maybe we'll get him on.
she's
and
like,
he
we're
can
probably at
confirm.
6,000 by now. But no, it is really interesting. So what would be a great thing to kind of start with is, I think, what is it that kind of kills libido? So now we understand what libido is. It is the sex drive. It is influenced by so many things. And like we said, it really helps with testosterone, hormones, and just the release of endorphins as well, and that closeness and calmness. So in the modern world, I think, there's so much more anxiety these days, and stress and pressures. So what is it that you guys think is kind of lowering the libido? What are the libido killers that we face day to day in the modern world?
It's got to be stress is number one. And in pushing on from that as well, it's the antidepressants as well. If you're stressed and you start getting depressed and you start taking medication to fight that, they all have a knock-on effect. I don't know if you guys have ever done antidepressants. I say done antidepressants like it's a fun thing.
Like it's a
You ever done
weekend.
you ever done a line of
Matt turned
sertraline?
up to a party on a Friday night like, I've got some antidepressants. And everyone's like, are you okay? Are you okay now? Yeah.
But if you actually, anyone that's ever done them, it's like, there's no tents being pitched.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
they mess with things.
Yeah.
And it's actually a spiral, because if you can't have sex, and sex is fun, and then you're not feeling better about yourself. But antidepressants, stress, all those negative emotions, all the neurotic stuff, none of that. No one's having sex when you're feeling like that.
Yeah.
If they are, it's very angry and horrible.
I think it's really interesting you say that. And what I always mention this, I love the research. I love, whenever we do research on these things, I find out so much about myself and things that I didn't really think about. But we previously did a podcast on stress and anxiety, and it was so interesting. And a lot of that came from the caveman and the stress responses that you deal with then. Unfortunately, you're not running away from a saber-toothed tiger now. You're getting a really, really crappy email from Anne in accounts, and it's really stressing you
Sorry,
out.
Anne.
Your body can't tell the difference. It's right, I'll handle her. I've got her. She'll walk in a minute. I'll be like, hi, Anne. Sorry, yeah, love you. But you are completely right. And I think the stress, again, you know, your body doesn't understand the difference between that hard deadline at work versus, you know, that fight or flight instinct. So I do think stress is a huge implication.
Could you imagine
of it.
if the body didn't stop you having sex drive if you were stressed? Back in the day, you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, but you got a rock on. You're like, oh, I need to go somewhere. It's
That hurts, yeah. And I think
That was
you're right.
very visual from the both of
Sorry.
you.
This is why they've put you between us, because they're like, right, we've got to somehow
break it
find
up.
Yeah, exactly that. And then on a slightly more scientific level as well, it's that cortisol as well. So we discussed it before. When once upon a time, when your great times a million grandfather was running away from a bear, saber-toothed tiger, whatever it was, the cortisol comes in. You stop digesting food so that all energy can go to your legs so that you can pump and run. It's the same when you are stressed out. That cortisol is stopping like your reproductive organs because it's more focusing on trying to fight that immediate stress that you are dealing with. So that's why, you know, intercourse and being closeness with someone, yeah, we can really help with stress, but also as well, it does impact it.
It's the switching off as well. Like, if you think about, like, you talk about work maybe 9 to 5, but, you know, you've got work on your emails, and generally, where do we keep our phone at night?
Yeah, it's
By
right
the bed.
Yeah, right
Hardly
next to us. Yeah.
romantic if you see like an email pop up from a colleague or someone chasing you for something.
Yeah.
You're hardly like going to carry it on.
Yeah, and I try and take steps. So I don't have work emails on my phone, but people will contact me on my phone if it's an emergency. But, you know, as with most jobs these days, there's 1,001 group chats that you're in, and it sort of never seems to stop going off. But there are, you know, that's maybe a bit of advice we'll come around to later. Things like, you know, putting your phone outside the bedroom. It's a big bit of advice.
There's some
you
little
hear
steps actually that just can affect
that
a
have
lot.
big results. Absolutely. Tony, what do we think kills the libido? What are your thoughts?
So I think I've already mentioned obviously the fact that menstrual cycle's a big thing. You know, if you're on your period, you know, there are certain times, like you say, maybe you're a certain age and you're just like going to roll with it. But actually, you know, when
I've
you hit
got
a certain age, you're just like,
is
that's
what I
not
have.
going to happen.
Actually, yeah, no, I'm like, no thanks. I'm like, Jesus sees this, by the way. No, not for me.
Moving on from that.
Moving on. Okay, so the other big libido killers, poor diet. Really bad diet, that really impacts it. So, you know, junk food, unnatural things like really high sugary diet, that impacts it pretty badly. Off the back of that, alcohol.
Yeah,
again,
definitely.
I think
Either some people really enjoy it and, you know,
When I
push
was
them
younger,
one
I
way,
could-
but otherwise,
yeah.
sometimes it can be
When I was younger,
the
I
downfall.
couldn't fuck without alcohol. Whereas now I'm like, now I'm older, I'm like, but if we're going for a night out, we're like, we'll do it now. We'll get it in before we've been drinking
beforehand,
and
otherwise
eating.
it's gonna get a bit messy.
I find that
absolutely.
sometimes though as a male there's a disconnect with the brain's like, yeah, I want it, and the lower half's like, no, you've had too many beers. You're not doing anything.
Some of the lower,
Too much coordination.
Yeah. Some of the
there.
lower ones just like stand down, so stand down. And also as well, I was going to touch on that with stress. I think sometimes as well, if you're not super feeling it, and that stresses you out, and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling it. What am I going to do? Vicious circle, because that stress that just ramps up, and the more you're trying to be like, come on, the worse the stress gets. But so I think stress, diet,
There
obviously
are
the
other
part
big
of
things
menstrual
as well.
cycle.
Like we've talked about menstrual cycle, obviously it goes into like menopause, that's women of a certain age, you know, when you're perimenopausal, all of that can affect women in very different ways. And I found it quite interesting when I have been reading about menopause recently. You know, if I put it to you, what is the number one side effect of menopause, do you think, for women?
My mum said she got awful hot.
Flushes.
She was always...
There is nearly the same amount of women that report having a low sex drive. It's nearly
Interesting.
the same percentage, I
Yeah.
think nearly like a third or something, maybe even more actually. But yeah, so I think that's something that isn't talked about, you know, and some women go into menopause very different ages, but it's a big window. So it will affect quite a chunk in like a woman's life. So I think that's probably quite a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of things that actually affected me. So obviously I did have a child. Afterwards wasn't definitely not my number one priority to have sex. Again, that label will put you off for a little while. I will say that to people listening.
Bet. Yeah, absolutely. Could you imagine, Matt, if you went to a Thorpe Park and what's like the ride? Nemesis Inferno. I can't wait to ride Nemesis Inferno, and then you saw like a blood-covered baby coming out of one of those tunnels, you'd be like, I'm not so desperate to get back on that ride anytime soon. Like, we give it a few months before we get back on that.
You've now ruined parts for me, Harry. Nemesis Inferno was my favourite,
that bit
but
where
it's
it like
not
comes,
anymore.
comes out of the hidden bit
There
and it
it
comes
is.
through, and if you stock a blood-covered baby coming out of that, you'd be like, might get on that ride. No thanks.
But the funny thing is, a woman's body tells her to get right back on that ride.
Yeah.
The body
And
can be evil sometimes. You've just gone through
a
something
woman's
stressful.
body is so fertile after having a child. Like, it's one of the biggest things in all like your appointments after giving birth. They're like, are you on contraception? Are you on contraception? What contraception are you on? Because they're like, you can get pregnant really easily. And it's like, whoever is thinking about that and needing contraception, hats off to you, because, yeah.
So it took a little time to sort of come back round and feel your normal self.
Yeah, and I think, especially for a first child, you're very much learning the ropes as you go through it. Like, I didn't really know anything about babies or changing nappies. So, again, higher priorities, that is your core focus. And I think as a mother, you definitely do kind of shift to sort of being a bit one-track minded, although my husband would probably agree. Like, all you do is learn how to be a mother, really.
Yeah.
So, and then
I'm sure you've got so much responsibility, and again, it brings it back to the stress part as well. And you've got so much
Time.
more. Yeah, no time for it.
I've
You
never
have to
heard of
sit
a
there
new
and think
parent
about it.
not to be stressed.
Yeah.
It's the first thing everyone says, I've
So
had no
everyone says,
sleep.
when the baby sleeps, sleep. And it's like, well, what if I want sex? It's like, well, that's not going to happen. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then the other thing I was going to talk about is actually when I was 31, breast cancer diagnosis. So
Yeah, of
chemotherapy,
course.
7 months of that. Again, kind of.
You were not.
My body was like, do you know what? Maybe not sex today.
No, I know.
So, although obviously, we were engaged at the time, my husband and I. So went through that. We did have sex across all the treatment. Obviously, he was great, but the lack of hair. I had like a port in my arm,
Oh,
so
God
for the whole
bless you
time, so,
guys.
he was a bit like, I didn't look the wellest.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
there's plenty of people out there that are going through all of this and all these different treatments for, all sorts of health things. Again, your body just, it goes back to that fight or flight situation, doesn't
and
it?
It's so interesting to say that as well. 'Cause, it's an amazing story. I think we'll have to. I think that's a whole episode in itself, just to hear about how about your time in it. But like you said, it's not top priority at the time. But then also as well, you're still people. You still want to kind of live your lives
you
and
want
stuff.
the
You want to have that
closeness.
closeness.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm sure he's. He wants. When you're having health issues, I'm sure he still wants to make you feel attractive and things like
Yeah.
that. It is a really difficult situation to be
And
in.
there's no guidebook to that, is there?
Exactly,
There's
and that's the thing I
you're
very
not
much
told
felt for
this.
him trying to go, everyone's going through something that was, very different and raw.
But no, a
yeah.
really, really interesting insight. And I think, the other big libido killers, I know we've spoken about diet and alcohol, but I think, deficiency in certain vitamins and minerals, that's a huge one. I think when
Even in hormones, there's some people, women, there are treatments and things out there, lack of testosterone, that is a thing in women too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sleep deprivation, that's another huge
That
one.
comes in part with stress again. It's
Yeah.
all interconnected. There is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple of other really big ones, and we very briefly touched on this the other day, but I think we were like, whoa, we'll pause the conversation so we don't ruin it. But I think the first one is obviously like a lack of exercise, and by that, like a sedentary lifestyle. If you sit down your fat arse all day, your blood's barely flowing, and it means it doesn't flow to the right places when you need it to get there. If you're really lazy, and
It's also about like blood pressure and your heart
Yeah,
rate,
and
and
people-
all of that happens when you start to get the horn.
Yeah, and people who exercise more regularly, they're proven to have a higher sex drive and be better performing at that. And I think one that's so prevalent to modern day society, I think this is a really interesting talking point, is how easily available overstimulation is to us now. So when we were, especially when we were younger, people sold, they were like lads mags and grot mags that people
Nuts
bought. People,
magazine.
yeah, exactly. People went to the corner shop and they bought Nuts magazine. And it was
Page 3.
page 3 in the newspaper.
I
they
used to
bought-
love Page 3.
Yeah.
They took it away.
Keely
It
something.
used to be so. I go in my dad's work van and see a Sundays, but I'm like, just quick little peek at this, yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Or you'd go in the
naughty.
corner shop and you'd look at the top shelf and they go, hey, get out. And you're like,
But that's it. But what people do, people used to buy lads magazines like Nuts and Zoo magazine. They'd go home with that, and that was kind of all they had. Whereas now, anyone who has got a phone in their pocket, which is crazy. If you told people 30 years ago that they picked up the phone, you'd be like, you're gonna watch people fuck on that. by
Yeah,
the way.
you got that in your pocket.
But that's the problem. Is anyone now can pick up a phone and they can be like, right, I want to see
Whatever.
17 Latina gangbang, and I want to see
People can
counterclockwise.
accidentally stumble on it as well. It's not necessarily people targeting it. You know, you hear horror stories of like really fucked up people putting it in places so that people stumble upon it, or like young people see it and stuff. And I think, like we talked about, sort of how porn is so accessible at a younger age, but it also desensitizes.
I think that's the cool thing there, how it desensitizes, how it builds people's unrealistic expectations. Back in the day, it would be maybe a drawing or something.
2D.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
It's Theo Von, isn't it? Yeah, he's just like, I was going to go and like, draw pictures for me and it do it just right. Whereas that's the problem. Whereas now you can open up your phone and you can essentially find the sexual equivalent of Cirque du Soleil. 17
I'm sure there's many a pun on that.
17 acrobats all flitting around. And then, of course, then it's really surprising when someone then has a partner and they're not as stimulated as they should be, because this person, they're still be comfortable and this and that, and they're just because they're not, I don't want to say too really crazy things there, but just because they're not like spitting on it and saying crazy things, that someone's a bit like, oh come on, give me
I think it's good to differentiate. Porn is not sex. They are very different things.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where if you only consume porn, and at a young age especially, you come to sex, you're like, this is
boring.
This is different. Where's the cameras? Like this is not like this is not as I
It's like an
expected.
element of performance, isn't it?
It is. They're professionals. They're acting. It's like it's. What's a good one? I don't know. It's like me.
What's a good
It's
one?
like me coming.
Tell
It's like
me.
me coming into this office every day, and every day when I come into this office, I do work. It doesn't turn into Die Hard, where I run around the office with a gun and I'm shooting. Because by that, my regular life would be boring. But that's why it's a movie, and that's what real life is. And it's kind of the same with sexual intercourse as well. If you're expected to be like absolute filth crazy every single time, like you're going to be disappointed. But again, it's the difference between real life and the movies.
And
My
there's-
stepsisters
girls
are so
have to-
boring, honestly. I've been promised so much. Honestly.
You're like, hey sis, yeah, super creepy script writer as well. Like, hey sis, how's it going? And like, you're waiting for them, like, any minute.
The other one
That's the weird thing. Incest porn's gone mainstream as well, hasn't it? Every time,
Who started that? He's got to be
every
on
other
the
video is
list.
like stepsister or stepdad. You're like,
Help, I'm
Christ.
stuck.
Yeah, people got problems here, man. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it becomes disappointing for
But
your
the
real
other one,
life.
have you heard about the North Korean soldiers? So
Okay, what have you got here?
Miles M. George mentioned this the other day, and I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
But basically, they've taken themselves out of the war, essentially.
Well, so North Korea have joined to help Russia, but as leaving North Korea, they're now not got the restrictions. So they've got access to the internet, unfiltered internet. So they are finding poor dead North Korean soldiers with a phone in hand, like the people from Pompeii when they find it. These
Phone in the
men-
hand, dick in the other hand. And
Yeah,
guess what?
like brain blown out.
Brain blown out, but a big old smile on their face. they went happy.
They can't take them away from the phones. They're not fighting.
Yeah.
They're wanking. There's a reason Russia's not winning.
They've
Most of
finally
their
got
soldiers are-
access.
They're beating those dicks like
They're
their own
amazed.
money.
They're like, why
Yeah.
are you all fighting? There's so much sex everywhere.
Yeah.
This is great.
It's all love.
They've turned from fighters into lovers, haven't they?
exactly.
They're like, yeah, no, we don't even need to be
And now
doing
they've pulled
this.
them out because they've realised what the rest of the world lives like.
Oh no.
I was-
Unrealistic expectations though.
Oh, the poor North Korean women now, their soldiers are going to come back and they're going to be like, oh no.
Yeah, how do they not know how to perform?
I think as well, it's also, I heard something else really interesting a while ago, but to try and bring it back to a slightly more scientific point, is also as well, the connection and excitement of touch and really being there with someone, it's very different to when you're watching something. Ultimately, you kind of rewire your brain to then be aroused by like visual stimulus, like that's not real. You're kind of tricking it, and it then sees the phone as
And
the thing
then
that turns it on.
yeah.
It's kind of the like Pavlovian response or whatever, where like when you're so used to like seeing your phone and you become aroused by your phone, that's what's doing it. Whereas when a person's there, it's kind of like not as interesting to you. It's a really sort of interesting
Scary
twist. Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
But then I was going to say, actually, the other side of that, yes, obviously both men and women watch porn, but also you've got
They
the girls.
What?
Hold on, this is news.
Whoa,
Whoa,
right,
Newsflash.
breaking news.
Newsflash.
Write the time of this down because we need to look this back.
Are you shocked?
I
hate
only
to
learned that
break
women
it to
fart
you,
last week, by the
but-
way.
Is it like-
Who was that? Was it Alicia? Like obviously women love a rom-com, men do too. But you talk about unrealistic expectations. Women watching these rom-coms about all these gentle lovers and things like that, and it's like again all these weird standards out there in media. But it's just everyone. There's plenty of people out there that have got some interesting kinks, but it's like find your person, find your lobster, and just find something that works for you both. Because it's
absolutely.
everyone's got very different sex drives, so there's always compromise in relationships, but it's finding the best time, place, situation for both of you.
I will say that Amish people must have great sex because they're not getting sensitized to anything, so their baseline is here. There's nothing. So they see an ankle and they are loving life.
That's what it was like in the 30s. No,
It's so interesting you say that though, because you're right, because it's as different as someone's personality is their sexual desires and their sexual wants. Just because someone likes one thing doesn't mean that's what everyone wants. And I didn't realise that until I was 30. And I think someone's gonna meet a girl and like you said, they want a lot of passion and gentle lovemaking, and other times you'll meet someone who wants to be choked and spat on, and it's very confusing. It's very difficult to. It's
I
quite
guess
a
we
lot
need
to
to talk about foreplay here, right?
Yeah, it's quite a lot to like switch gears here. And I think I was with people before where they were just like you'd kiss them and then they'd be like, do it. And you're like, I'm so sorry, Mum. And then you do that to another nice girl, and they're like, afterwards, they're like,
what the fuck?
They're like, what the fuck was that? And you're like, you didn't what? No, I didn't. What the hell? You spat
Mixed
on me. I was like,
messages.
I just can't bloody win
Sorry,
here.
love,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. yeah. It's like, oh god, what's that thing? It's like when you see like a 2-year-old fall down, you pick him up quick, like, hey, you're all right. Hey, go on, get out of there. Yeah.
Go on,
Sometimes it's
go
like
on,
that, and they're like, what the hell was that? You're like, yeah.
It's all right.
We're
We'll
okay. Moving
brush it
on.
under the carpet.
But you're right. It is. There is no one size fits all. And again, I think that's the difficulty with everything we see these days. Is like anything. You have to go further and deeper. Pardon the pun. To get those, to get that release, to get that excitement or whatever. And I do desperately worry for future generations.
It is scary. I was just going to say about the foreplay thing. I did actually recently listen to another podcast, and there was a really funny comment, because obviously, like we say, there's so much that affects libido in every day-to-day life. And I think, there are still certain stereotypes out there. I know times are changing, but, generally a woman might run the household and things like that. And on this podcast, she was basically saying, men need to realise that foreplay for women starts hours before.
Oh.
Maybe even like the day before.
So can you repeat
It's
that so I can
not-
just take a note? Okay.
Yeah, Matt.
It's
Matt,
not
so-
a case of spitting on your fingers and cracking on.
Spit? What?
Do you know how foreplay in my house? I figured it out really good recently. What I'll be like is I'll be like, let me just get the Hoover out, and I'm like, I'm there like,
Exactly.
what's up? Like,
got the little
getting
skirt on as
real
well.
good. No,
I
I
want
don't.
to
It's
break
all
free.
part of the dance. Yeah, sometimes I'm there just like, oh, let me just let me get a little dusting done. I'm like, terrible job. Nothing's ever actually been clean, but I'm like, oh, I know the game
Makes
these
her think
days.
that she doesn't need to bother because you've
Yeah.
done a bit of it.
But
And
also,
then as soon as we finished, I'm like, by the way, it's a fucking mess out there. You wanna?
It's just like fucking crammed it on the side.
big nerd alert, but Big Bang Theory, Howard said a quote in it. I remember this from years ago, and I've written this down. And there was like, he's about to have sex for the first time with his missus, and they went, by the way, foreplay, whatever time you think it is, triple it.
Oh, really?
And he's like, what the fuck? And she's like, Howard, triple it. Promise you. And he goes in, he doesn't triple it, and it turns to shit. As you can imagine.
This is something that we've not talked about. We're talking about libido, but, there's different types of things. People talk about sex and think about penetration, but yeah, there's all different types of sex as well. So it's not just about necessarily hitting, like, doing that. But, there's plenty of different things that, if you listen to all these other podcasts and, professionals, I suppose, actually they're then talking about all the extra things you can do, like cuddling and kissing and, the more intimate stuff and the foreplay side of it and how that is such a big focus.
Absolutely.
Even couples therapy on that side of things.
Well, sex is not just clapping cheeks. I learned this new the other day.
I like to just knock the bottom out of it. That's what I like to do.
you
Just
guys
straight
just
in
looking
there.
up all the puns.
Yeah, but no, absolutely, you're right, and also as well, like people have very different desires, and absolutely, and then obviously you can argue, and again, people are so different, and some women are more clitorally stimulated rather than penetration. So yeah, there are so many variables that come into it, but to bring it back round to libido. So we've got a good understanding now of what libido is, what it does, and how it's different as we all are. We understand poor diet, stress, sedentary lifestyle, overstimulation, that wrecks it all. How about let's give the people at home some really good advice on what we can do to improve libido. What is it that we can do to help, I don't know, regenerate it, restore it? What can we do? What advice can we give to help improve people's libido?
Well, I suppose like the first thing you can look at is diet.
Yeah, basically just the previous section backwards is what we do. So diet, obviously.
Well, everyone talks about oysters.
Yes.
All these, what's it,
An aphrodisiac, yes.
Name me some
Although
aphrodisiacs
I don't
then,
know.
darlings.
I think years ago I'd been like seeing a woman be like,
Oyster.
hot, hot. I'd have been like, that doesn't turn me on. Whereas now, if I saw a woman be like, hot, hot, I'd be like, oh, hello.
Really?
I'm
I
like,
still don't
good
get
day.
it.
Yeah.
I still really don't get the oyster
I worry about
thing.
the breath though afterwards. Like,
Well,
whew.
from my research, it actually says that this is actual Google research, not that I've just been giving oysters to people and been like, "You ready to go? Good to go."
Matt, I like to think of you at home on a Friday night, like trying different foods, and after each time, I'm like, a 5 out of 10. Yeah, sorry, Matt. Give us your.
Spent all my budget on oysters.
I'll give us your input.
No, apparently it's high in zinc, but it's not actually proven to have a direct libido boost.
Oh, so it's the zinc in
So
it.
there is a lot of relationships that have been ruined by oysters. Honestly, people have had that and they go and they're like, "No, I'm just not feeling it."
Not even
Again,
a
just
wiggle
have a
down there.
supplement, save on the breath.
Yeah.
But dark chocolate. Everyone knows dark chocolate's good for you.
Yeah.
I didn't actually realise this as well.
Forgot about that one. No, definitely.
Yeah, so it's
If Valentine's Day, get the dark chocolate set.
Yeah, I hate dark chocolate though, to be honest with you. But you're right, it's increased.
Maybe
it
your
increases
fiancée
dopamine.
doesn't.
Yeah, maybe. I'm pretty sure she doesn't.
Why is it about you?
But we'll see. And I don't want to be too crass here. I'll tell you why it's about me, because one of us has got to do the work. One of us can just lay there and be like, ready.
You
And
can
one
lay
of us
there
is
as well.
like-
We're in 2025, Harry. Pegging is
Oh, I don't know, man. You ever like tried
Is it not for you both?
You ever tried like throwing a piece of spaghetti down a hallway, just like a dart? Like, Jesus Christ, man. You ever tried putting a...
Does your fiancé listen to these,
You ever seen a
Harry?
kid... No, she listened to one episode. It was like, you sure do talk a lot? And I was like, good, I've got permission then to say whatever I want, because you're never going to listen. Matt, have you ever seen a lock that a key goes in? Imagine trying to stuff a marshmallow into that. How do you think that'd go, okay? That's why it kind of matters one way more than the other, because one half of this party has got to be ready to party, and the other side can kind of just be like...
The other one doesn't need to be ready to... But we've just been done a whole section on foreplay.
And this is why you're here, Tony, to rein it back in and bring it back around to a very 50-50 perspective. Oysters, dark chocolate. I'm going to say watermelon, full of citrulline, which relaxes the blood vessels and helps get the blood flowing. That's a really good one. And I think things like peppers and chilies as well, known to increase blood flow. Blood flow, obviously, more
A lot of the
again.
supplements, it's all about all these different things, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like the foods that we're talking about, what they have in them, that then actually, if you don't eat the foods, you can just supplement.
Yeah,
I think
exactly
it's
that.
having these foods doesn't directly affect libido, but if it reduces stress, indirectly it's helping your libido.
You're not going to eat these foods and then be up for it. It's got to be one of those things that builds up, so why not take a supplement instead?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of my research is ashwagandha and maca root are massive, and you're seeing that in a lot of these mushroom coffees. I found it quite funny when I found
Yeah.
out about these things
Well,
helping.
It goes back to energy. So
Yeah,
many of the
absolutely.
supplements are focusing on energy or, blood and, getting that circulation
Getting things
working.
moving.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, it's indirectly affecting libido. And I think that's the thing, it's always about general health, but, specifically these things. So there's one supplement that I read about recently. I think it's like the golden capsule. Can't remember the brand. So actually saw Abby Clancy plugging it, which I thought was interesting because she's
poor old
like
Peter.
early 40s. Yeah, she was saying apparently it really improved her and Peter Crouch's sex
Oh,
life.
wow.
And I'm like, it's Abby Clancy. Surely he's always up for it. Yeah, and she was saying she's not in menopause or anything, but all these supplements are focused for, hormone balancing and energy levels and hair, skin and nails. And, it's got all of these things in it that actually you could get from all these different supplements. But, the branding, you've got your little blue tablets for boys.
What
Yeah.
have women
Now-
got? Is
now
there
you've
a
got the gold
female?
tablet.
Is there a female equivalent apart from the gold
I
tablet?
read there was
There's something called
something...
Climagra or something, isn't it?
I
Is
didn't
that a
see
real
that
thing?
one. I've seen these golden pills, but there was one that I read about that came to market. I don't know if it was just America in 2015, but it was mad what it actually did with studies. So basically, Viagra, the way it works in men is essentially it helps refocus the blood.
It just
And that it
gets
just
your
gets you
blood
hard.
flow
So that is
going.
it.
Yeah.
So that's how it works in men. It is just blood. That's how it works. But the female version in America, I think it was about 2015, instead of focusing on anything like about your reproductive organs, it did something to the brain to try and stimulate a woman to want sex.
Interesting.
And I just thought it was mad how men can just get away with this plumbing issue and, you know, get the blood down there. Whereas women, they were trying to play with our brains. I didn't like that
There's
at all.
definitely some joke about men and women here in complexity.
Exactly. This is the thing. It's getting deep in there for women.
There's a reason I'm
Right, and
single.
it is, you know, there is so much of a difference in it, and again, it's just this whole like not one size fits all, and again, that's as everyone as individuals, and of course as men and women individually as well. So, supplement wise, I think, but Matt mentioned, you obviously like ashwagandha, ginseng. They're both known to sort of help with stress, boost blood flow and arousal, things like that. L-arginine, that boosts nitric oxide. Again, it's blood flow, and maca root. That's another good one. But then it does, so that's as like a general, but then it does split out for men and women. So for men in particular, fenugreek is proven to increase testosterone, and then particularly it's like zinc and magnesium. I know you touched on that earlier. Zinc and magnesium meant to increase sperm count. And then for women in particular as well, we're looking at a couple that I can't even pronounce, to be honest with you. Shatavari, which is a herb that boosts estrogen and increases the natural lubrication, so the gland, obviously. I learned there's a gland down there. That's what does the wetness.
wetness.
I wondered how long it would be until like it really.
And then tribus trestis, again, increases arousal, sensation, and
there's
again, lubrication
testosterone levels as well,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I think, you know.
Correct spelling here when old Timothy puts it back in. Yeah.
It's all about those hormones, isn't it, as well, and getting the balance / helping to increase some of them.
Yeah, but ultimately there are those sort of general supplements that kind of help everybody, and then there are male and female specific ones. But it is so interesting that you touch on that it's not the same plumbing issue. And again, for women, so much more. If for men, I think it's such a physical thing, and for women, I think it is like a much more mental thing for them as well.
I learnt something. Well, not learnt something. Something that had crossed my mind, but I hadn't really put two and two together. You know, when we think of men having issues with arousal or desire, you instantly, I hate to say it, but you just think of a limp dick. But actually, there are guys that, struggle, they can go all night, but they won't necessarily come.
Yeah.
I'd vaguely heard of this issue.
Me and Matt are just here like, are there?
There are men with issues.
Not heard of that before. We're just, absolutely.
That's Matt after 5 beers.
Like you say, alcohol does not work well. But yeah, it was something that I hadn't, again, going back to stereotypes, it was one of those things that, you just instantly think, oh, he can't get it up, like he must not fancy me or whatever. Yeah. But actually, a girl might, be sleeping with a guy and then he's like, yeah, it's not happening tonight. Yeah. And she's just like...
I think it's good to address the stereotype so that's just not a bad thing. It shouldn't be a shame thing. It's like, it's not because he's not attracted to you. It could be because he's stressed at work and he's had a shitty email and he's like, look, I can't get this horrible email from someone in accounts.
He's clearly very aroused, but it's that getting over the line.
It's not translating to the areas that matter.
Yeah, exactly
that. Was quite interesting.
I don't think I was going to give the other guy any sympathy, be like, oh, you poor man, you just went all night, did you? Oh, you poor thing. When there's someone over there being like, I can't even get a wiggle down here, okay? I hate you. Yeah, absolutely. But it's so different. And again, it's what we're saying. There's no one size fits all, and it's all unique as people are. Everyone's got different problems and different needs and different ways of dealing about it. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big ones for blokes as well is the pressure as well. And I think the more pressure they put on themselves, the worse they're going to perform.
Well, you were just saying it won't happen unless you can perform.
Yeah, and unless you can relax as well. It's arousal. It's a dance between like excitement and relaxation. If you're too anxious and too stressed, it's not going to happen. If you're too relaxed, it's not going to happen. It's an interesting balance that has to happen. And I've been on both sides of it. God damn it. And then it's interesting to say as well. And then
two of you have got to be on the same page. Yeah. That's the thing. It's not just one person, like both in the same place at the same time.
And it is tough for women because obviously you want to feel attractive, but then, if a bloke's then struggling, he's then going to feel worse, like he's not making you attractive. And it's a vicious circle. And you mentioned about, the blue pills and stuff. Sadly, it's not like a movie where you take one, you're just like, pow, you're like ready. Like you're kind of giving yourself like a low-level heart attack. You're just massively ramping up your blood flow and your heart rate and stuff like that. And I think Dan Bilzerian, he's like had a heart attack through partying and taking like a load of Viagra and stuff. Like there are real side effects to it. You're spiking your blood pressure and your chest palpitations and stuff. Absolutely.
Have you seen Meet the Fockers where the old boy takes it and he's like had it up for like 6 hours?
Oh my god,
De Niro, is it? Yeah, and he's just like I can't help this.
Yeah. No
We have a
way.
friend of ours actually that lives over in Amsterdam, and maybe it's not as accessible there, or you have to have a
What,
prescription.
in
or-
Amsterdam?
I don't know.
You can get weed, but you can't get
Maybe
bonus.
he had different plans. But he was back here, and my husband met him, and my husband sent me a video of him in boots in town stocking up
Yeah.
on the little
Because
blue
the man was just like pouring it into the cart.
Yeah, can I
Yeah.
buy it? And they're like, you're like, yeah, how much have you got? And they're like, what do you mean, sir? You're like, give me
Give it all.
Give me everything. You're leaving like
Buying your Viagra by the kilo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Hey, she's
maybe
in for a
just-
hell of a Christmas.
Maybe he knows too many people in Amsterdam, but
Yeah.
he did it more
You
on the
just
sly
outed a
when he was
Viagra
here.
dealer.
I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe you can go to Amsterdam. You're like, yeah, I'll buy some weed, I'll buy some mushrooms, and I'll buy some Viagra, and then they're like,
No.
yeah, they're like, no, we won't sell it to you. They're like, oh, what? But there's hookers in these windows up and down
Yeah.
the road, but
Natural.
Viagra's a step too far. Yeah, that sounds crazy to me, and it's really interesting as well. I think to touch on a couple of points that we've sort of already spoken about. Obviously, there's been a real, change of the guard. Women are sexually liberated now, whereas like 20, 30 years ago, they
Sexual
weren't.
revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of off the back of that as well, it's people having sex younger and younger as well. I think, obviously back in the olden days, doing it before 18, or even once upon a time, doing it before you're married, which is crazy. To me, that would be like going to a shoe shop, trying on a pair, and seeing a pair of shoes, and they'd be like, do you want to try them on, sir? And you'd be like, nope. I'll just buy
have
it,
'em anyway.
and I'll hope they look good and feel good when I get home. That seems insane these days.
Can you imagine
doesn't
having
it?
like one of them arranged marriages and then the sex drive is polar opposites?
Yeah.
It's just going to
But it's cultural as well, isn't it? I think that's the biggest thing. But like we were saying earlier about like porn desensitizing you as well.
Yeah.
Age comes into it.
We really briefly spoke about this the other day. So I think, people having sex younger and younger. And I'd be really open. Like I say, I lost it when I was 15, and I was too young, and probably so was she. And I think me and Matt briefly spoke about this before. I remember thinking the vagina was basically just below the belly button. I remember like poking around for like 20 minutes, like, where the hell is this thing?
Sex education
Yeah.
did not
I didn't realise-
exist.
I
I
didn't realise
really hope it's
all the
come
way.
on
It's
to
like
it.
all the way like under. I was
Sex
trying to walk
education
straight
classes in
into
school.
it.
Sex education classes in school were not for learning; they were for laughing and giggling at penises on a TV
Yeah.
screen.
Ridiculous,
That's what they were.
yeah.
We learned
Yeah,
nothing in
Absolutely.
those
so
lessons.
at school they were basically like, by the way, do you know you could catch an STD and go blind? And we were like, all right.
Here's a picture of a
Yeah,
wart.
chill. They're like, that's a banana,
Crabs.
that's a condom on it. You got
Yeah,
it. And I was
done.
like,
That's all it is.
I wish one person would be like, wherever you think it is, it's a little lower. I wish anyone had given me that advice.
Just like a little.
Problem is, by the time my
snippet
parents
into
actually
it.
tried giving me the talk, I knew more than they did. By the
Harry,
time-
spoiler alert, you don't.
By the time my dad tried to be like, oh, by the way, I was like, I'm pretty sure I know a little more about this than you do, Dad. But yeah, I think that is like a really challenging thing that young people have to deal with. And then off the back of that, everyone grows up so much younger because of social media, and then also as well the social media, the younger people, the sexual liberation of women. The explosion of OnlyFans over the past
there's a lot
few
been
years.
going on there. Well, the last few months.
Oh, for sure. So I don't know when this gets dropped, and it's probably old news by this point. But obviously, the OnlyFans star, it was Lily Phillips, wasn't she? She slept with 100 men in a day or in 12 hours or whatever. And do you know what? It's horrible. I didn't see the video, but I just saw like one of the interviews afterwards where, bless her, she's
So, can someone press the bullshit button on that bit?
bullshit. I don't have the money to be paying for OnlyFans accounts. Yeah, but afterwards it was a really horrible interview where basically she's talking about it and she kind of starts crying because she's like, after number 8, I didn't know the difference.
That's so harrowing.
Yeah, it was really horrible. And then the worst thing by far, even worse than that, is like a week later, Bonnie Blue, she fucked 1,087 men in 12 hours. Do the maths. How many is that? In 12 hours, 1,087 men. It's like a ridiculous number. They must have been lining up round the block and
That's
being
the thing.
like,
At the
get
moment
ready.
in the press, everyone's focusing on her, the fact that she had that many
who
men.
are these
Who are
cretinous
these
men
1,000
who were stood
men?
there and someone's there like,
I thought
you're on in
that they
3,
would
get it
enjoy-
hard.
I mean, clearly did enjoy it. I don't know.
1.5 men a minute.
1.5 men a minute. If Bonnie Blue
There
got
must
she
have been
she
so
could get a
much
job
lube.
at like head office of McDonald's or something. That customer service and that turnaround and getting him in and out
was
that
it
quick.
service? She was just lying down, right?
I've not watched the video. I dread to imagine. I can only assume to get that number in, they must have just been everywhere in every
But there is
possible
a
crowd.
surprise.
Like there's
thing,
little memes
yeah.
that happen
There was
there.
efficiency because the men had to line up and then they had to sign forms and everything.
There was like
and
some-
they must all
Some
have
men ended up
balaclavas.
obviously passing because they were like, oh, maybe not. Like,
They managed to
imagine
find
being
87
lucky.
extra. They got to 1,000. They were like, you know what? More.
They were like, Bonnie, we got a few more. We had some spares. And she's like, get him in here. I used to
Lucky
work in
number,
event
like,
management, timing,
900.
people coordination, guest numbers. It's a lot
Yeah,
of work. And I'm like,
yeah.
there must have been someone that day like,
How long were they planning that?
all right, 952, in, okay.
Organising
950.
1,000 horny men.
982 struggling to get up. 983, in there now.
Do you reckon they had the cashier one, like cashier number 5?
Take a ticket like a
system.
counter.
Yeah, so no, I do agree.
That's a
Firstly,
huge amount of
she's getting a
men.
huge amount of shade for it, which I don't think is undeserved. I think, Christ, oh my God, like, you know, I think obviously
She did it for the press, and
your parents
boy,
were
did
like,
she
hey,
get some.
boy, are we talking about it?
Do you know what the worst thing is as well? OnlyFans have banned the video.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad.
She's not making money off
I'm
of it.
glad.
Oh, but look at all the coverage, though. Everyone's trying to talk to
these
her. I'm sure she's making
these
money out of it.
cretinous men who are like, there was some bloke who was like 1,055, and he was like, great, I'm nearly up, am I? Oh, only 1,054 men have been in there before me. Great, can't wait to get in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Lucky me.
Imagine
Yeah,
being the flat
exactly.
next door, though, and you've got the queue of men coming past, and you're just trying to go to the shop. She's like, what is going
Well,
on
the
here?
funniest thing that I think is at some point in their life, someone went up to her in a pub and was like, oh, hey, you're really beautiful. And she was like, no, thanks. And that person's like, she fucked 1,087 people and turned me
And she
down. I'm
didn't
like,
fuck me.
yeah, I'm just have to kill myself now. Yeah. But it is really tough. And again, I think explosion of like women's liberation, it's like that then plays into people sleeping together younger. And then also as well, I think this then also then makes it harder to become, you know, aroused later on in life. And it's raised the baseline of what normal is. I think these sort of really sexually liberated people and how it's so central in the media these days, I think it's kind of raised the standard. It's raised the baseline of what people consider to be normal these days.
I think everything feels so extreme sometimes. Like, we're talking about raising the baseline of what normal is, and there's always this focus of normal or average. But then equally, there's another side to it where, you know, there is a liberation to a degree. There's also, you know, slut shaming and stuff going on left, right, and centre, you know,
Yeah.
revenge porn and all of that. But equally, you know, people are getting labels for what they are if they didn't potentially like fit into one of these groups. You know, there are people out there that are actually asexual. You know, it's a very small number, maybe like 1% of the population. But there are people out there that aren't interested in sex.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
maybe they still want the companionship, but just regarding, you know, penetrative sex is a no. And, you know, regardless of it being them, it's just ultimately like people figuring out what's good for them, what they enjoy, what they like, and rolling with that. I think there's so many comparisons in life that, you know, in regards to, like you say, social media at a young age and, you know, consuming all this media and all this propaganda from the TV and wherever, that actually it's like everyone's keeping your lane, focus on you,
Yeah.
and make sure you understand what you want as well. Because, like, going back to the solutions and supplements and stuff like that, another one that I read about was, you know, actually masturbation. Figure out what you like and, you know, learning about your body and stuff.
Playing solo player. Playing campaign mode. Matt, tell us about that.
Always
How
on.
many times a week are you? No, I'm joking. Sorry, just gonna. I wasn't trying to make that joke. That sounded like a lead balloon, wasn't it?
Well, I do-
Matt, how many times a week do you masturbate? Let's
I'm doing it right now.
aggressively.
What I wanted to just touch on there, Tony, is I'll go back to. I'll tell a funny story about my first time, right? And talking about shame, and it'd be would have been.
I love that you're like, let me tell you a story about my first time and shame.
Well,
and deep shame.
We, as a society, it would be much better if we could talk about sex in a shame-free environment. If I spoke to the poor girl that I had sex with the first time and what she liked, it would have been a much more pleasant experience for both of us. I did no
On the
research.
same page.
I'd watch Pornhub. I know what I'm fucking doing. 3 seconds later, I'm like, "Do you want a drink?" So I watched a comedy show. Went, you know, you've done good in sex if you offer a drink, and she says yes.
Yeah.
I was like, "Do you want a drink?" She's like, "No, don't fuck all."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh."
I'm not breaking a sweat right now.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just, as a young man, you're not going to ask the girl what she wants. She was just like, she said yes to sex. I'm going to do it and I'm going to be great. And it's like, we would have done a lot better job if we just communicated like adults. You know, 15-year-old me,
Yeah.
he fucked it up.
No, but I do think, but also that's that maturity level as well, isn't it? Where you're a younger person, you don't have the confidence to have those conversations.
But
with
you
people
feel
at
like
that
you're
time.
old enough to be doing things like having sex.
Yeah, but you feel like you have to be a
mad,
macho
isn't it?
man and just be like, I'm going to take the lead here.
You're like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You are, for sure.
I've got to be a strong man. I've got to buy the dinners. I've got to do all that. And it's like the
I've
reality
had
is,
enough wanks.
Yeah, it's
I know what I
I've
like.
touched it and I thought, I had no idea. Harry said about the positioning of things. It's like, I could have done with like an infographic. That would have been great. Like,
I feel like I feel like I could use one of those like miners' head torches. Like, well, where are we looking here? I can't even see anything here.
Who are we talking about, Bonnie B?
I don't know why it is. When you're young as well, for some reason, when you're first doing it, like people are like, let's do it in 100% pitch black darkness. And I'm like, I need a little help here. Okay, I need a nightlight or a glow stick or something, just so I can figure out
didn't have a glow stick on both
the
wrists?
geography of where I'm going
not an
here. Yeah,
airport.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I need. I need someone like.
It's Bonnie Blue's future husband.
That
mate.
is
This is
great.
I need someone waving me in like this way. Yeah, absolutely. Lighten up the runway. It didn't happen. Just had a quite angry dad as I was leaving that day. Like, Clive.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. When
He's
the
like,
dad
"You
picks
mother."
him up afterwards, and you make the eye contact. You know what you've done.
No, I left her house. I was like, well, see ya. My dad, I've never been so happy to see my dad in all my life. My dad was out the front. I was like, well, see ya. Hey, Dad. Let me just. So you're in a good mood. I was like, great.
Did she go and get a drink?
Oh no, I'd left too quickly. I was like,
Ran out of the house.
I was like, see ya. I barely have. Yeah, never mind. I won't say that. Bringing it back to libido. So we've had a really nice chat about what is libido, what wrecks it, what makes it good. Guys, what are our top tips? What are our takeaways? What can people do? Matt, give us your best educated summary of what someone can do to really help boost their libido and really improve it. The
Boost
best
the
side.
libido, communicate and work out what works for you. I think there is so many different things that can influence it. So make sure you've got a healthy life and then work out if it's still not working for you. Is it your partner? Is it you're not exercising? Are you stressed? Look at your life objectively. Look at your life objectively and then take an approach from there.
I like that. I think following on from that, I would say it is, for me, focus on finding out the root cause of the issue. Because, like we say, there's so many things going on in your life. Like, if it's affecting your libido and your sex drive and, everything else, then chances are if you figure out or make some small tweaks, be it supplements for energy or, whatever it may be, if you address that small issue, chances are it's going to have an effect on numerous parts of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose if I had to give some really good advice, I'd say you want to give it that hot tour, spit on that thing. No, all jokes aside, I think it's really easy. It's super simple, and I love doing these podcasts, but ultimately they kind of all have been rounding up in the same way. It's eating clean, having a good diet. It's getting in some good exercise. I'm an exercise junkie, but also not over-exercising, not overtraining and depleting yourself. It's lowering the stress and not taking it home with you. It's supplementing wisely with like the maca and the ginseng and ashwagandha and fenugreek, and limiting the overstimulation.
Stop watching porn.
Stop watching porn.
Unsubscribe from Body.
Yeah.
Stop
Yeah,
unsubscribe from Body Blue.
Stop-
The video's not that good.
Yeah, stop beating it like it owes you money. And again, if you're watching something where there's, where people are doing crazy stuff, and then you're going home and you're expecting your partner to do it, you're
Come
just
on,
she's
a
put the
whip
kids to
and chain.
bed.
you're setting exactly. You're setting unrealistic standards by saying that, and it's your libido. It's like Wi-Fi. Okay, we've got to figure out some of the ways to boost the signal, and we've got to get a booster in, or what are the weird things, the dongles or whatever. Some of those people have to get installed to help boost that. So things like a good diet, some squats, some oysters, a little bit of macaroo. It can really change things for you.
It's got the image of Harry having oysters, macaroo, doing squats.
all in one in the
with
gym
a
in the
dongle
morning.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
exactly. So that's our big advice
Look
for
after
the
yourself.
takeaway. Look after yourself, and again, just communicate honestly with your partner about how you're feeling and what's your stresses and kind of what you want out of life. So hopefully the people at home found this useful. We're not going to be really,
Amusing, I'm gonna say.
absolutely amusing. And let's face it, look, we all know someone who could deal with some of this advice. So send them the episode, tag them in it, and if they're still having problems, then they didn't listen to the full episode, and it's their own fault. But otherwise, guys, I think that's probably a pretty good place to leave it today.
Absolutely.
Tony, a pleasure as always.
you, kind
Thanks for
sir.
bringing a bit of dignity to the podcast that Matt and I were so clearly lacking before. Max did
don't know
well,
how much
baby.
range you
Yeah,
had.
That was good, that one.
absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. Give it a like, give it a comment. Let us know what you want to talk about next time, or don't. We don't really care. We're going to keep rocking these out either way, shape or form. What's this? This is episode like 6 or 7 now.
Oh, I can't count that high.
90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 5, so congratulations to us. We've officially done it.
What one did I come in on?
Like 5. They were like, this is make or break on this one. We're about to cancel it. So Tony's given us a few more. And then 90% of those podcasts never make it to episode 20. So we will see you mothers at episode 20. Otherwise, it's been the Fig Factor. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. 3-way high five, and we're out of here.
Oh my God.
Fig Factor, there's no one like us. The only podcast you can truly trust. Matt Maxted.
The Fig Factor, there's no one like us. The only podcast you can truly trust.